We are just honored and blessed this morning to have Laurie, Wondra, and Joan.
Good morning. Thanks, Gary, for the microphones. He knew we would blow it out if we had the headset, so we appreciate that this morning. Wow. I always like to just pause and look at the energy here because
Tell me what you're
it's
seeing.
such shining light. I just see a flow of upward, and as Jay said, when you leave here, you're going to feel like you're floating. So it's a good time to just gather in the entryway here and get grounded again, because we're going to help you float this morning.
Yeah, and it's not just us doing it to you. You're doing it to yourself. You're doing it to each other. It's like And by the way, we're talking about the masculine and the feminine today. It is National Sisters Day.
Yay!
So my intention is that we are all going to be sisters, no matter what gender you are. By the time we leave, we are going to be sisters.
You know, I was sharing with Joan, I woke up this morning and the first thing that I heard was what the world needs now is love, sweet love. That song, What the World. So, and then I couldn't find my watch this morning.
Which is very feminine, not
right?
to be tied to the
Not to be tied
rule
to
of
time.
Yeah.
So they're already speaking to me this morning. As you know, I'm a channeler, so they're going to speak to me this morning as we sit and talk. So.
And I'm a questioner, so it works out really well. I'm the curious one. We want to start by saying that we got together for an hour and 45 minutes, or 2 hours, something like that. And we were going to sit down and we were going to make a plan about exactly what we were going to talk about this morning. And we had a fabulous conversation. It did not involve planning.
We did.
But then we started to think that is exactly what we're talking about here.
Right, the feminine energy. And I shared with Joan, I was on Lake Superior then the week after we met, and I really had the intent of channeling information, and I did get a huge download of stuff, which we shared, which we're going to cover loosely today. But we had fun, and that is being in the feminine energy.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we decided, the classic masculine energy is very linear. And it is this, then that, then that, then that, then that. And there is nothing wrong with that. But the feminine energy is a bit more circular and a bit more flowing. And so we are going to play with the feminine energy inside a little bit of the masculine structure that you downloaded.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just to remind everybody, we're not talking about gender, we're talking about energy. Everybody has masculine and feminine energy. And we've been working lifetimes in trying to get that in balance. And so this month's theme is the balance of the masculine and the feminine energy. I got to tell you, in all my years as being a spiritual teacher and a channeler, there's never a perfect balance. It just isn't a perfect balance, but it is understanding where the energy is at a given time and getting it back to where you might want it to be or where it needs to be. Okay.
Yeah, I think we're kind of all born on a continuum of masculine to feminine or feminine to masculine. And then sometimes when you dip outside into the culture, you see the distorted masculine or the distorted feminine. So when we talk about that today, I don't want anybody to take it on and say like, oh, I was bad because I was a man and we were, we took part in this kind of distorted masculine behavior. This isn't about any shaming. This is just about awareness so you can understand how it presents itself in the culture and how we can show up with it in a powerful way and look for balance, because balance is the beauty.
It is. And one of the things that came to me was this lifetime for many of us, we're learning how to be in that balance, whether it's to be in the balance of the feminine energy or be in balance of the masculine energy. That's honestly what we're learning. And so if you're struggling with one or the other, look at it from a different lens. Is what about this side of the energy that I need to experience or learn to have that balance?
And speaking for myself, I was raised to not honor the feminine. And so it's been a really interesting journey, because I found out maybe 10, 15 years ago, somebody looked at me and said, you have such feminine energy. And that shocked me, because the whole time I was growing up, I wanted to have masculine energy, because I saw that the masculine energy in the culture that I was growing up was the energy that had the power, that had the ability to direct, that had the ability to receive, as opposed to, well, just a little, I love my my dad, he's been gone for almost 20 years now. But just to give you a hint of my childhood growing up, he would sit at the head of the table. It was my sister and I. We were the only two children. And he would rattle his cup. And that meant one of us was meant to jump up and go get him a cup of coffee. You know? So I was raised in frustration with that, knowing that I had more to offer than to do the dishes and to respond to rattling cups. So, as my husband will attest to,
that brings back memories, because I was very close to my father also, but I grew up, he was an avid fisherman, and I love fishing. But my earliest memories were I had to bait my own hook. I had to take my own fish off, and later I got to clean those fish. So
I did not
it's
get to
the
clean
role
them.
model, but I have many, many memories of learning and being affirmed in that masculine energy. And then my career, my information technology, my career in computer science, the other side of my brain was all masculine oriented. So
I think you're pretty balanced. That's my
we're
diagnosis.
learning. We're learning. Well, we have an exercise for the group this morning.
Yeah, everybody, would you mind if you're able to stand up for just a moment, play with us?
And it is play with us.
Yes. So, let's imagine that I am taking a picture of just you, and this is my camera. How would you address the camera? How would you appear to the? Would you change your behavior for the camera? Yeah, you'd look for the camera. What would you? Is there any difference in how you appeared, how you would address the camera? You guys are so healthy.
Yeah.
Do you know, how would you classically address the camera if you were in the female culture? Exactly. Exactly. There are classes, you can sit down if you'd like. There are classes, there are articles written about how to disappear yourself from a picture as a female. And it doesn't say that it's about disappearing yourself, but if you look at the energy of it, that's what it's asking you to do as a female. It's saying, tilt yourself slightly to the camera, put your foot forward, raise it a little bit, make your chin out just a little bit. So the idea is to appear as small as possible. And if you look at pictures of football players,
Yeah. They're like this.
it's like this. It's like, how big can you be? You know? So that culturally is something that kind of inundates us. In fact, there was a study that a woman by the name of Amy Cuddy, who's a social psychologist, I believe, for Harvard, and she suggested that the superhero pose will alter your chemistry and the outcomes of interactions that you have in your life. And the superhero pose is that masculine pose, you know, doing as much as you can to take up as much space as you can. Now, my understanding would be that it's probably grounding, that you're touching the ground with all of the energy that you possibly can, and so it's coming back and it's coming out in your interactions with people. But it feels to me like it's a masculine and feminine division.
I would agree to that, and sometimes it feels unnatural. So if you've ever been asked to pose in a certain way and told how to pose, and it feels unnatural to who you truly are. So that's a good notice too. So thank you for playing this morning with us.
Yeah.
So
well,
maybe we should sit down here.
Sit down and get to what you actually, what you said. You wrote me and you said, I had an epiphany.
I did.
Lord, I love epiphanies.
I did, because what I asked for is I didn't want to talk about the classic masculine, feminine. We get that, right? There's masculine, feminine attributes, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. But I wanted to get the introspection from the angels about energy-wise. And those that have heard me speak, hear me speak about the physical body, the emotional body, the spiritual body, the mental body, you know, the energy bodies that we have. And when Joan and I got together, I started hearing this, well, it's the physical body. Our organs are masculine and feminine.
And I kind of went, duh. That wasn't what she was talking about.
But We did have a good laugh about that. We did. But when you think about bones and skin, right? What would you classify are bones or skin? Masculine, feminine. Muscle and fat. Yeah, we start getting into lungs and liver, blood, those types of things. We have an energy, and the body is magnificent because it keeps us balanced. It really does.
Mm-hmm. So you already are achieving balance of some sort just by being here in this beautiful balanced body this morning.
Exactly. We come in and we're pretty balanced. But then we start working on our emotional field, which is that energy layer. And there are archetypes that are masculine and feminine archetypes. Do we want to go through some of those?
Sure. That was your big epiphany in your download part of it, wasn't it?
Well, part of the epiphany, I don't want to give it away just yet, but there's archetypes like the king, which is very masculine. And there's the lover, but in the masculine energy, there's the lover, as well as the feminine energy, there's the lover. So we can identify or adapt to those archetypes based on society, based on our upbringing, the friends that we're around, our social connection, those types of things. But I feel, as I mentioned earlier, I feel like where we are right now is we're noticing where we're uncomfortable in those archetypes, or where we need to shore up or align with those archetypes a little bit more, or we need to adapt maybe the opposite or adapt the other ways.
As a matter of fact, this morning I was reading the newspaper, and I was reading it with an eye toward what we were going to be talking about today. And you can see the discomfort of the culture happening. It was talked about on the front page. There was an article about a McAllister football player who was going to be going out and talking to high school football players about not taking advantage of young women. And he even described the culture as people who were seeking wealth, who were seeking athletic prowess, and who were womanizers. That was how he described the prevailing culture within the
Wow.
football system. But he said he's going out there and talking to them about not objectifying women. And you'd think like that time has passed, that time has not passed. So that's an example of how we are uncomfortable with what is happening in the culture.
I would agree with that, and we're taking action to that, as that article said.
And the second article was from the Guthrie, and it was talking about they are finally going to achieve equity between the largely female sewers, seamstresses in the Guthrie, and the largely masculine shop workers in the family and set designers. And they were so excited about it, but it will not be achieved for 4 years.
Wow.
So I mean, to me, that feels like what we are working on both internally and externally.
The internally, the planets that we're under right now are really forcing us to look at internal, where we are, where we've been positioned in society or in our family, and does it fit? Does it align to us? And historically, many of you are working through some ancestral markers, some karma, some dharma from past lifetimes, where even the men were sent out to hunt and the women were dependent to cook and take care of the children. And that carries through in our lifetime. But there's value in both. And I think in this lifetime we're realizing there's value in both, and we can do both.
And we also see the argument as to why we should not change happening out there in the culture too.
Yeah.
I mean, we see some, part of the shift, part of the chaos is some of the masculine digging its heels, and some of the feminine, distorted feminine digging their heels and saying we don't want change. And so that's where you can run into some of the confusion that I think we've all run into out there.
So one of the things I asked the universe is, what are some of our role models that we should look at? And I was thinking current state or current lifetime, and they took me back to Athena. They did.
Describe Athena for me.
Well, Athena, she's the warrior goddess, a lot of fight, but in that she also had the downfall of not really demonstrating the feminine attributes of compassion and love. She had that toughness. And then on the flip side of that, there was Eros, which is Cupid, Remember Cupid, the little? So he was first depicted as this warrior, very masculine image, but he wasn't really accepted, so they changed him to be this cherub-like baby because society was uncomfortable with looking at a masculine man running around with arrows, shooting love arrows. I find that really humorous, right? So they adapt. I mean, we're talking about way, way back, thousands of years ago. But his weakness was that, he'd shoot arrows, but his weakness was he really didn't have any structure, so sometimes he'd just randomly shoot arrows, right? Which could be trouble for some people. Right. And so even in those times, there needed to be a balance, and those two, as I sat there, those two needed to learn the balance. They needed to learn the opposite in order to move forward in that time, and so that people would listen to them or people would honor them, but they demonstrate that balance or lack of it.
So we have the sample of those two who were imbalanced, but basically the female was the example of the extreme masculine,
exactly,
and the male was the example of the extreme feminine.
Exactly.
So how does that shift then happen, where you come into balance?
Well, it demonstrates that we need both. That it's required that we need both, and that's our learning to be more present, more energetically, more aligned with society, as we actually need both. And so without one, we can only be that warrior, we can only be that love, but we need structure or we need love in that.
You just came out of business. You spent a lot of time in the corporate world, which is classically masculine energy.
Yep.
Of competition, which can be, if you look at it, it can be very similar to the idea of war.
Absolutely.
It is, one company trying to put another company out of business or out of life.
Right.
So how did you
survive?
Yes, survive. Seriously, I mean, it's...
Well, and I was in information technology, so very science-oriented, where there aren't a lot of females that go into that career. I shared Friday night when I was here channeling, I shared that I would oftentimes sit in the boardroom meetings or sit in meetings, and I would just watch energy. And I could see where someone's energy was flat or they were not being honest, and I would draw that out. So I used those gifts very stealth-like in a corporate setting, right? Because I couldn't come right out and say, you're lying, or I see your energy. It just wouldn't happen. And also moving the energy. Sometimes I would get up and I would pace or I would stretch in the back of the room just to move some energy.
So the bottom line is the energy of the feminine has never really been absent.
Correct.
It's the ability to see the feminine energy, accept it, respect it, and honor it that has not been present. It's
acknowledging that you have both. I'll have to admit, there were some times in my career that I had to really pull out what I would call the masculine, the strength, the being terse, being angry, being very firm, and it was not comfortable. I'll just be honest with that. So there are times that I made a conscious decision to bring out that energy. But I knew I was consciously making that decision.
See, I made unconscious decisions like that. I used to work in television news back in the day here in Minneapolis, and it was there was a very specific role that the feminine was meant to take in that arena. In fact, my boss at one time even told me that the female on the set with 3 men was meant to be the beauty queen.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it was a very frustrating environment to be in, again, as a female, knowing that I had gifts but not knowing how to communicate them. And so I unconsciously went to anger. And I had to find a way to get so angry about something that I could express something to the masculine in the newsroom.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I didn't know that was what I was doing until I looked back later.
Until afterwards,
yeah.
Yeah. But it is that state about uncomfortableness. And I just want to ask, how many of you are finding you're in these uncomfortable moments that you're having to dig deep within your energy field? Because honestly, that's where we are. Chiron, which is a comet, is in Aries, and Aries is about I am. It's a very masculine or strong energy.
Know that intimately.
I do. I'm an Aries. But Chiron is playing with us right now to make us go internal. And then there's like 5 planets that are retrograde right now, and all of them are helping us go internal. And we talk about the Lion's Gate, which is 8/8 in August, and then the eclipse that's coming up on 8/11. That's all in Leo. And Leo energy is I will. So you got the I am and the I will. And all these planets are pushing us to scream out, here I am to the world. And it's pushing buttons for us. So I'm always curious as to know how that's showing up for people when you're needing to speak your truth.
Well, it's been a very uncomfortable month, I have to say. Anybody
July,
else
yeah.
feel the same? A little bit of a blender.
Yeah. So when did all this feminine energy really come into our radar? Let's talk about that.
Oh my goodness. All I can say is about my personal, it came into my personal radar probably in my late 30s when I started to question the norm. It was like, before, it was just, that's the water I'm swimming in, and it's murky, and I don't like it, but I have to swim in it, and my life is uncomfortable. But then I started to have that, it was just like this little glimmer, this little shaft of light that shows up that says, oh no, you have something to offer. And when I looked at what I had to offer, all of my skill sets were soft. They were soft, they were nurturing, they were the invisible, they were the love that I would send to people, they were the kindness that I would attempt to offer people. It was the soft stuff, and it wasn't being appreciated. It was kind of poo-pooed. Going back to news again, they would call any story that had a positive outcome or a moral to the story, something that you would want to follow, they would call it soft news in a very disparaging way. That's soft. We need hard news. They would cheer when something would come along on the police scanner that was harsh and maybe blood was spilled. It would not, and I don't want to say cheer in a like, yay, that happened, but it was like, okay, we have a lead story, because the lead story would never be the soft one, the one that left you feeling better about your world. And by doing that, the spokespiece for our world is telling you that softness is unimportant. You only put the spotlight on things that are important, and what was important, what was going wrong with the world. So I tried to balance it out, working there, trying to find a way to bring the softness in. But I quit that a long time ago.
That had to be incredibly uncomfortable for someone that's so bright and light in the heart.
It was hard. It was hard for me. I remember my first story, I worked up in Duluth, and the first story was, it was a fire where there had been a young fatality, and I remember sitting on the curb crying and thinking, like, I don't know how I can do this job, but I know that I was meant to be in there to balance it out, even if it was subversively on some level.
Yeah.
So,
very good. Well, I think planet-wise, the shift began to happen in the year 2000. So the number 2 is very feminine.
Interesting, yeah.
So think back maybe where you were in the year 2000, where you were in the year 2002. Mm-hmm. 2012, there was a huge shift because that's where the galaxy, the planets between Sirius and Pleiadians and the Earth began to come into alignment. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we are approaching, guess what? 2020. So we are honestly preparing for greater balance in that year of 2020. And then we're in a whole 10-year run of 2021, 2022. So the stuff that we're dealing now, those that said, it's been a rough month, we're preparing, and everything that you're experiencing is helping you prepare for what's coming. Mm-hmm. So we'll get a little reprieve at the end of August with these energies, but I got to be honest, it's going to be the next couple of years as we continue to prepare. And preparing is really accepting more of the feminine-like energy, that ease of that flow, okay?
The internal.
The internal
rather than the external.
Yeah. And I want to be clear, we do need the masculine. I mean, we do need the masculine energy because that gives us structure to go forward. Otherwise, all of us, the feminine energy, we would just be. I'd be sitting on the couch. I'd be sitting outside in my garden, right? So we do need the masculine
You're
energy.
describing my life.
I have days where it's like, do I want to sit outside or do I want to sit at my desk? So I just got to be honest.
Well, to go back to the organ idea, just picture a body without bones. So,
Yeah, exactly.
We need the structure. I need the structure. Somebody help me with the structure.
So some of the phrases that have come out since 2002, I was kind of amused by this. The masculine energy is all about mind, health, and that. Okay, the word that. The feminine is the feminine is spirit, happiness, and I am. So back in 2002, if you look back at marketing, mind, body, spirit was really coming about, right? Do you remember hearing that? Mind, body, spirit. We still hear it, but it really was emerging at that time. In 2012, it was about health, happiness, and well-being, that balance, okay? What do you think it is now? Now it is that I am now. It's powerful.
That.
So if you walk away with anything, any mantra today, I'd like you to take that with you, is that I am now, because the galactic, the higher consciousness galactic is the word now, bringing it into present now.
I love that. Can you just tell me what in your feeling state, what does that feel like to you to say that I am now?
It's really bringing all that we've been working on into core rather than being out here, focusing on me, myself, I, those things that ignite me, in order that I can bring it out into the world.
Because our plan up until this point has always been build it and they will come. Build it out there, find the structure, do that, and then somehow go in and inhabit it. But the shift is now. This is the portal of exploration. This is where you need to spend time. I laugh because I do spend a lot of time in contemplation and just being and all that sort of stuff. But it's been so necessary for me because it helps me to understand who I am, and it helps to anchor who I am in what I do. And what I've found is the more that I know about who I am, the more confident and the more movement I get out there. It doesn't look like it to other people, but I feel the movement.
That's really
in my life.
Critical, because I think those that are still projecting out or are still carrying outward are getting events or happenings in their life that are creating the focus to be more internal. Okay? And sometimes that is felt in our abdomen, our digestion system, or our joints. So if you're feeling more physical ailments, it's just your physical body is telling you you're needing to focus on the physical being first.
I hope it doesn't bother him, but I have the little boy who is laying on the ground in front of us here today is my 4-year-old grandson. His name is River. And he is, that's another thing that I would ask people to do, is to look at the children around you, because they do what they want to do. They are who they are, much to our chagrin sometimes. We think we should be in charge. But there are gifts and stories.
The children that are coming in are at a higher frequency. You mentioned earlier that at your shift you began to have a realization when you were about 30. But the kiddos that are coming in now have a jump start on us. They're already more in that balanced energy. They don't have to work as hard as we do in that discovery. And if you have teens or preteens, you're realizing that they are more in balance. They're using their voice more. They really don't care about the separation or the he and the she. So it's about the they.
Yes. And that's how this is showing up in your world as well. There's been so much movement in the continuum of the sexes out there, where all of a sudden, it seemed like it went from, gay marriage? Absolutely not. How could that possibly it's happened. Okay. It moved quickly. All of the conversations regarding the transgender movement, it's happening out there. This idea of balance is being presented to us in so many ways, and that's one really powerful way.
It's magical. It's magical to watch. And I look back to, 2012 was a really pivotal year when the planets arised or moved into alignment. And I sat and I thought back to what were some of the things that I was seeing in my clients back in 2012. And at that point, I can honestly say people were asking more about careers, what's next, more of the structured things in their lives. And recently, people are asking about relationships. People are asking about, I want to leave my corporate job, or I want to leave structure. People are asking about, I feel like I'm a healer. How do I move into that? Is anybody in any of those domains? Like, you're really noticing the shift, right? And that's part of that energy that we're experiencing right now, is getting us to where we feel we're aligned in our soul. So
I went through it, and I've talked to you. The phrase "I'm a selfish quitter" comes to mind because it is so. To me, it's so powerful when you recognize there is a self that needs to be attended to. There is a self that works in the world in a particular way, and to ignore it becomes almost impossible. You are selfish in the most positive way until you are forced to choose yourself, and.
That word in itself, that's selfish, right? That makes me kind of go like this, because I don't feel like we're selfish. We take care of ourselves.
Well, you know what? I think it's about the identification with how we've identified with that word. Selfish has usually been said to you with like one of those.
Yeah.
Stop being selfish, that kind of a thing. And I'm on a reclamation project with the word selfish because I think we have that's again that external idea that we play with so much. It's out there. We need to please the out there. We need to take care of the out there. And that's lovely, but we do it to the detriment of the in here. And I always liken it to the in breath and the out breath. You can only survive so long on the out breath.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then at some point you have to take the in-breath. So that's my reclamation of the word selfish. So if I use it, I'm not calling you out, I'm calling you in. So
beautiful. Well, I wonder if we want to talk a little bit about the bodies that I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
We touched on just some of the physical. I see how these resonate with you, if you have the list in front of you. So masculine, feminine. Masculine is large intestine. Sorry, guys. But again, that's not
needed.
Gender. Okay, that's energy. Female is lungs, and as Joan was saying, you have to have that in and that out. Stomach is masculine. Spleen is female. That's the chi energy.
I don't know where you are, so just keep going.
Well, I don't know that I want to go through all. Small intestine is masculine, and female.
You got it all,
is
guys. You
heart.
got the small and the large.
But think about that. The large intestine, stomach, small intestine, that's your digestion tract, right? Right? And if you've not balanced out, you're going to feel it there. How obvious is that, right?
And I'm so sorry, but it's output,
Because then you have the bladder, too. The bladder. So, but I want to talk about the emotional body. So the emotional body, as Joan said, the masculine is outward and the feminine is inward.
The masculine is expressive. It tells you what it wants. And the feminine is more quiet and more inward.
The masculine is anger or drive, and the feminine is peace.
The masculine, and I really want to say it again, we're not talking
gender.
Men and women, we're not talking gender, but the masculine energy is frustration, and frustration is a powerful thing because it allows you to ask for change. So masculine is frustration, and the feminine, oh my gosh, I've spent a whole lifetime of doing this, is acceptance. It's like, whatever you want to give me, That's kind of distorted feminine, but yeah.
Masculine energy is stress. Feminine is calm.
And the masculine energy is fear, which again is powerful and necessary. You need to know when to run away from the saber-toothed tiger.
Exactly.
And the feminine is love, which is the magnetism. And it comes to me, I was doing a divorce seminar with some wonderful women about 2 years ago, and this dawned on me, and it's true for me. I don't know if it's true for everybody, but I was thinking about the feminine. And I was thinking about woo-woo. And I think, because woo-woo, we all know what we're talking about when we talk about woo-woo, right? It's like the unseen, the unexplainable, the mystical, the magical, the thing that's been discounted in a scientific culture. And the woo-woo that you feel in this room and that we talk about is the feminine. It's the space in between us where all the magic happens, the intentions lie, the imagination is. So,
And mystical.
yes.
Yeah.
And magic, my word, your
and
word.
magic.
Yeah.
So you had touched on the electric and magnetic. So that's in the etheric field. So early on you asked me, what do I see?
Yeah.
So when I see energy, it's the electric force or the magnetic. So electric is masculine, and the magnetic is feminine, the drawing to versus giving off. And we have to have both. As healers, we have to have both. And we honestly do. The etheric, masculine is force and feminine is flow. And masculine is rigid and feminine is movement. So when I see energy, that's oftentimes what I look for, is where someone is in those.
And you go back and you think, like, how could you exist without a certain degree of rigidity and a certain degree of movement? So,
Yep.
I mean, it's that beautiful balance.
So as we go through these, are you identifying with components of both? So let's run through the mental, and then I want to get to the spiritual body.
Okay. So in the mental, the masculine is scientific fact, which is basically where we've been living in the American culture, and probably most for, at least 100 plus years. It's very much, show me the science on that. And that's the masculine. And the feminine is reflective pondering.
So an example of that in our world today is technology, our phones, and how much we're noticing we're disconnected when are in our phones all the time, right? So the masculine is that scientific, it's use of data and technology, and the feminine is just, wait a minute, is this smart for us right now?
And the masculine is strategize. So we got together to strategize, found we were unable to do it at that moment. And so we decided to do the feminine thing and be flexible. So we found a way to just come up with points and figure out how to flow with it.
Go with the flow. Masculine is protective and feminine is carefree.
Masculine is the provider and feminine is the caregiver.
Masculine is competitive and feminine is union. And again, these are all in your mental body, your mental energy field.
Masculine, correctors. Feminine, connectors.
Masculine are the doers and the feminine is more assessment.
Masculine in the mental body, structure, and the feminine is heart-based.
Masculine are facts and feminine is intuition. And again, we need to have both. So now you've been waiting for a drum roll, the spiritual body, right? What is that? What is she? Well, the realization is that you have to have and you have to go through these bodies or these layers of energy and experience all of these before you get to that spiritual level, which there is no distinction between masculine and feminine. It is one. So we talk about the higher consciousness, that one with nature, one with higher God, universe, whatever your word is. You actually need to go through all the emotional body, all the etheric body, all the mental body, all those facets of masculine and feminine to open up into that spiritual, which has no classification.
So how are we doing on that?
Questions? What I feel that we're all driving to this spiritual opening, but then we get dropped down into those other layers, right? We get dropped down into those emotions, or we get dropped down into those masculine, feminine, mental. And so we talked about acceptance. It's really about acceptance, or just allowing and just honoring yourself that you have both. I'm having a moment of anger. I'm having a moment of frustration, or I'm having a moment of calm. I think we all strive to be in the calm and the peaceful because it feels good, right? But we have to experience both of them.
There would be no evolution if you weren't experiencing
Exactly.
both of them.
Exactly.
If you were going to be calm for the rest of your life looks a lot the same from start to finish. It's the frustration and the fear or the anger or it's the masculine energy that asks for change.
It's the contrast.
Yes.
We have to have that contrast in order to move forward. So when we think about, we have everything we need with us, within us, to do our evolution. The things that are external to us are just providing the opportunity or the triggers to really figure out what it is in those bodies that needs adjustment or needs observation or needs honoring.
So instead of being angry at it and instead of being frustrated that you're feeling that, the word might be perfect. What do I do with this now?
It's honoring. I mean, when I get, and I've had angry moments, I sit back and it's like, what is this showing me? And I need to honor it because that's why it's coming forward. I need to honor it because otherwise it's going to keep bubbling within my stomach or within my heart until I honor it.
You know, I don't know if this is a direct correlation, but it keeps coming up in my head. I had to honor crying. Crying became something that was something that I had to fight against my whole life. I was constantly this emotional presence in people's lives, and it's like you'd get the word like, you're too sensitive and you can't cry at business and go to the bathroom and cry if you're going to cry, and you know, that kind of a thing. So to honor, I call it my first language, crying, and when I think about it, it's everybody's first language. But women have been asked to put it away because it's uncomfortable. We don't want it. It doesn't seem to solve anything. And men have been asked to put it away because men aren't supposed to have the emotions. They aren't supposed to have that feminine balance. So to me, crying was it's so representative of who I am because my emotions are so close to the surface. So that's part of my reclamation is crying. And I'm going to cry today one way or the other with one of you. So just get over it.
It just is. It just is. I've had those moments too in corporate America where I've had to run to the restroom and cry in the restroom or go in my office and close the door.
Because it would say that you were feminine, and that was not an acceptable thing.
Exactly. Okay. So close your eyes for just a moment.
Me too?
Yep. Or you can join me here. So where we join on this energetic body, this is where oneness is. This is where we connect with our hearts. This is where we become grounded in gratitude. Joan and I are in gratitude of all of you being here today, being open and honoring of your energy. Oneness is where we play, we have peace and pleasure. Oneness is where we have abundance, awareness, and artistry. Oneness is where we are tireless, timeless, and thankful. We wish all of you peace, love, harmony, and the use of your I am energy in your speaking words to the world as I will. We desire peace, we desire love, we desire kindness, we desire growth and abundance. And through this we gain love, through love we gain peace, and through peace we gain community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'd like to close with a message from the Council of 13 Indigenous Grandmothers who speak to this. As you move through these changing times, be easy on yourself and be easy on one another. You are at the beginning of something new. You are learning a new way of being. You will find that you are working less in the yang modes or the masculine modes that you are used to. You will stop working so hard at getting from point A to point B the way you have in the past, but instead will spend more time experiencing yourself in the whole and your place in it. Instead of traveling to a goal out there, you will voyage deeper into yourself. Your mother's grandmother knew how to do this. Your ancestors from long ago knew how to do this. They knew the power of the feminine principle, and because you carry their DNA in your body, this wisdom and this way of being is within you. Call on it. Call it up. Invite your ancestors in. As the yang-based habits and the decaying institutions on our planet begin to crumble, look up. A breeze is stirring. Feel the sun on your wings. May you all be blessed.